Commander Thrace Vukoran stood on the observation deck of the Imperial acquisition vessel Dominant Will, watching the blue-green planet rotate slowly beneath him. Earth. Catalog designation, Sol 3. Status, pre-FTL civilization. Threat level, negligible. He had conducted 47 of these operations over his 23-year career in the Korvax Imperial acquisition fleet. This would be his 48th. The procedure was always the same. Approach a primitive world, identify population centers, deploy suppression fields, collect the required number of specimens, depart. Simple, clean, professional. The Korvax Empire had built its prosperity on the labor of lesser species. It was the natural order of things. The strong took from the weak. The advanced utilized the primitive. Every great civilization in the galaxy understood this truth. The Korvax were simply more efficient at it than most. Thrace reviewed the mission parameters on his datapad. Target acquisition, 50,000 specimens. Duration, 18 hours maximum. Acceptable casualty rate, 5% of target population during collection. The humans had been observed for 6 months. They possessed chemical propulsion, primitive satellites, basic nuclear technology. Their military capabilities were laughable by Korvax standards. Intelligence reports showed humans were fractious, divided into competing nation-states, constantly warring among themselves. They would be easy prey, perhaps easier than the Ythril had been, or the Quellan. Those species had at least achieved unified planetary governments before the Korvax found them. 6 harvest ships descended through Earth's atmosphere. Thrace had chosen a coastal region with high population density, multiple urban centers within easy reach. The humans would see them coming, of course. They always did. Primitive sensor arrays would detect the ships. Alarms would sound. Military forces would scramble. It made no difference. The first human aircraft appeared within minutes. Sleek metal constructs with chemical jet engines carrying missile payloads. Thrace watched from orbit as they closed on the harvest ships. The pilots were brave, he'd give them that. They fired their weapons from maximum range, dozens of missiles streaking toward the Korvax vessels. The harvest ship's defensive screens absorbed the impacts without flickering. The missiles might as well have been thrown rocks. The human aircraft made several more attack runs, firing until their weapons were exhausted, then breaking off when it became clear their attacks were having no effect. Ground teams deployed from the harvest ships in precisely coordinated waves. Suppression fields activated across a 10-kilometer radius, a harmless electromagnetic pulse that overloaded neural pathways and rendered targets unconscious. Thousands of humans collapsed where they stood. The collection teams moved in with stasis nets, processing the unconscious bodies with mechanical efficiency. But not all humans fell unconscious. The suppression field affected different species with varying degrees of success. Perhaps 10% of the humans remained conscious, disoriented but mobile, and they fought. Thrace watched with mild interest as human soldiers and even civilians attacked his ground teams with small arms fire, improvised explosives, even hand-to-hand combat. Their weapons were primitive, barely scratching the armor his troops wore, but the humans kept fighting anyway. A woman with a metal pipe struck one of his soldiers repeatedly until she was tranquilized. A man with a hunting rifle fired until he ran out of ammunition, then used the rifle as a club. It was futile, of course, but Thrace found himself respecting their determination. Most species, when faced with such overwhelming technological superiority, simply surrendered. Humans apparently hadn't learned that lesson yet. One moment caught his attention particularly. A human soldier, blood streaming from a head wound, positioned himself in front of a group of civilians that included several small children. The man's weapon was clearly empty, but he kept pulling the trigger anyway, then threw the weapon at the advancing Korvax team when it finally jammed. He fought with his bare hands until 3 tranquilizer rounds finally brought him down. Unnecessary, Thrace thought, but brave. Foolish, but brave. The operation proceeded according to schedule. Harvest ships moved from city to city, their holds filling with unconscious humans. 50,000 specimens collected. 3 harvest ships sustained minor damage from concentrated military fire but remained fully operational. Korvax casualties, 0. Human casualties, estimated 400 killed during the resistance, acceptable within parameters. 18 hours after entering Earth's atmosphere, the Korvax fleet departed. Behind them, Earth's communication networks burned with activity. Radio transmissions filled the void, broadcasting in hundreds of languages. Demands for the return of their people, threats of retaliation, desperate pleas for mercy. Thrace logged them all in his report as protocol required but paid them little attention. The humans had no FTL capability. They couldn't pursue. Their threats were empty. Their pleas would go unanswered. In a few generations, they would forget this ever happened or turn it into myth. That's what primitives did. The fleet jumped to FTL, leaving Earth's solar system behind. 3 weeks later, Thrace stood in a processing center on Korvax Prime, watching as the human specimens were cataloged and assigned to various labor colonies. The humans had proven more troublesome than most species during processing. Several had attempted escape. Others had organized resistance among their fellow captives. The processing center had been forced to increase security. Still, they were being integrated successfully. Medical assessments showed humans were physically robust, adaptable, capable of surviving in a range of environmental conditions. They would make adequate workers in the mining colonies. Thrace filed his final report and moved on to his next assignment. The Earth operation was over. Successful. Routine. He thought little more about it. The first sign that something was wrong came 7 weeks after the raid. Thrace was on leave at his family estate on Verath, the outermost moon of Korvax Prime, when his sister mentioned the news. She was an astronomer at the Verath Observatory, and she was troubled. "Thrace, have you heard about the stellar anomalies?" she asked over dinner. He hadn't. Military operations kept him busy. He rarely paid attention to scientific matters. "Our star," she continued. "Korvax Prime itself. It's showing unusual spectral readings. We thought it was instrument error at first, but multiple observatories have confirmed it. The star is cooling." Thrace frowned. "Stars don't cool, not on any timescale that matters." "Exactly, that's what has everyone confused, but the data is clear. Over the past 3 weeks, the surface temperature has dropped by nearly 3%. It's accelerating." 3%. Thrace thought about what that meant. Korvax Prime was a stable yellow star, billions of years from any natural cooling phase. A 3% temperature drop shouldn't be possible. "What do your colleagues think is causing it?" he asked. His sister shook her head. "We don't know. Some theorize it might be a dark matter interaction, others suggest some kind of stellar disease we've never encountered. But Thrace, I've been studying stars for 30 years. I've never seen anything like this. Stars don't just change, not like this." Over the following weeks, as Thrace returned to active duty, the situation deteriorated. The cooling accelerated. Within 2 months of the first anomaly, the star's luminosity had decreased by 8%. Surface temperatures across all Korvax worlds dropped noticeably. The homeworld of Korvax Prime, closest to the star, saw average temperatures fall by 11 degrees. The outer moons, including Verath, experienced drops of 6 to 8 degrees. Agricultural yields declined. Energy consumption spiked as heating systems struggled to compensate. Scientists convened emergency conferences, trying to understand what was happening. Every theory was investigated and discarded. Nothing in stellar physics could explain this. The Korvax High Command declared a state of emergency. Military forces went on high alert, though no one could identify what threat they were supposed to be guarding against. How did you fight a dying star? Thrace was recalled to the homeworld for defensive coordination duties. As his ship approached Korvax Prime, he could see the difference. The star that had shown brilliant yellow for billions of years now glowed a dimmer, more orange hue. It looked wrong. Sick. On the surface, ice was forming at the poles. Glaciers that had been retreating for a century were advancing again. Weather patterns were becoming chaotic as the planet's heat balance shifted. The projections were catastrophic. If the cooling continued at its current rate, Korvax Prime would be too dim to support life within 6 months. 14 billion Korvax lived in this system. Evacuation on that scale was impossible. Even if they had enough ships, where would they go? The Empire's colony worlds couldn't absorb that many refugees. 3 months after Thrace's raid on Earth, panic was beginning to set in. Then the message arrived. Thrace was in a tactical briefing when every screen in the command center simultaneously went black. Then, in perfect Korvax script, text appeared. You took 50,000 of our people from their home. We have taken your home's warmth. Return our people unharmed to Earth within 48 hours and we will return your star. Fail and your system becomes a tomb. You now understand what it means to touch Earth. Coordinates followed. A timestamp. Then technical data, streams of it, showing exactly how the humans were accomplishing the impossible. Quantum-scale devices embedded in the star's core, siphoning energy into an artificial dimensional pocket. The science was centuries beyond anything the Korvax had developed. The command center erupted in chaos. Generals shouted orders. Scientists frantically analyzed the data. But Thrace felt a cold certainty settle in his chest. The humans. The primitive humans he'd raided 3 months ago. They'd done this, which meant they weren't primitive at all. Deep stellar probes confirmed it within hours. The devices were there, operating at scales so small they'd been completely undetectable until now. The technology required to build them, deploy them, and install them without being noticed was staggering. The humans had infiltrated Korvax space, penetrated to the very heart of the home system, and placed weapons inside the star itself, all without anyone noticing. Which meant Earth had FTL capability, advanced stealth technology, stellar engineering beyond anything in Korvax science. They'd had it all along, hidden, disguised, deliberately presenting themselves as weak and primitive. But why? The High Command convened an emergency session. Thrace was summoned to provide his assessment. He stood before the assembled leaders of the Korvax Empire and told them what he knew about the raid, about the humans' fierce resistance despite their apparent technological limitations, about their courage in the face of overwhelming force. They were testing us, Thrace said, or perhaps we were testing ourselves and failed. Grand Admiral Thrace, the supreme military commander, slammed his fist on the table. We cannot bow to extortion. If we comply with these demands, every primitive species in the galaxy will think they can threaten us. They're not primitive, Thrace said quietly. We were fools to think they were. Then what are they? Thrace demanded. Thrace thought about the soldier he'd watched, the one who'd thrown himself between his people and danger despite having no chance of success. There's something we don't understand, something that values its people enough to do this. The debate raged for hours. Hardliners argued that the humans must be bluffing, that no species would develop such incredible technology and not use it for conquest. Others pointed out that the humans had already demonstrated they weren't bluffing. The dying star was proof enough. Time was running out. 48 hours. They had to decide. Records were checked. All 50,000 humans were accounted for, scattered across 12 different mining facilities throughout the Empire. But there was a problem. A terrible problem. 127 of them were dead. Mining accidents, the facility reports said. Cave-ins, equipment malfunctions, one human executed for attempting to lead an escape, all within acceptable casualty rates for labor operations. Standard, except the humans wanted their people returned unharmed. Thrace was given command of the return operation. He had conducted the raid, he would conduct the return. There was a certain symmetry to it. He sent urgent orders to all facilities holding humans. Gather them, prepare them for transport. Medical teams were to examine each one, treat any injuries. They were to be given proper food, comfortable quarters during the journey, everything possible to ensure they arrived at Earth in good condition. But the 127 dead couldn't be returned, and 83 of the living bore signs of injury or mistreatment. Broken bones that had healed poorly, scars from mining equipment. Signs of malnourishment. Thrace reported this to the High Command. They argued for hours about what to do. Some suggested trying to hide the losses, doctoring the count somehow. Others argued for honesty. In the end, they decided to return all the living and hope the humans would accept partial compliance. What else could they do? Thrace commanded a fleet of transport ships carrying the 49,873 living humans back to Earth. He ordered his crews to treat them well. Medical care for the injured, food matching their dietary requirements as closely as possible, heated quarters. He walked through the holding areas, seeing the humans awake now, aware. They watched him with wary eyes. Most didn't speak Korvax. They couldn't understand when he tried to explain they were being returned home. But one woman did. Her name was Kira Strand, according to her processing file. She'd been a teacher on Earth, captured in the initial raid. Somehow, in 3 months of captivity, she'd learned enough Korvax to communicate. "You're taking us home?" she asked, her accent thick but her words clear. "Yes," Thrace said. "All of you, I'm sorry for what happened. We didn't understand." "You understood perfectly," Kira interrupted. "You knew exactly what you were doing, you just didn't care." The words struck him harder than any physical blow, because she was right. He had understood. He'd known the humans were sentient, intelligent, that they would suffer in the mines. He'd known, and he'd done it anyway because it was his duty, because it was standard procedure, because everyone did it. Would Earth really kill 14 billion Korvax? Thrace asked. For 50,000 humans? Kira looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read, pity perhaps, or contempt. Earth would kill 14 billion for one, she said. That's the difference between us. We value every single life. You value efficiency and profit. You do this to species after species and you think it's normal. We've been watching you, watching all of you, all the so-called great civilizations of the galaxy. We saw what you do to those weaker than you and we made a choice. What choice? To hide, to stay out of it, to hope you'd all grow past this barbarism on your own. She smiled bitterly. But you didn't. You came to Earth. You took our people. You forced us to reveal ourselves. I didn't know, Thrace said. You thought we were weak. You thought might made right. You thought because you could, you should. Kira turned away from him. You should have returned us the first day. Every day you waited, every person who died, every injury inflicted, you proved Earth right about what you are. The fleet traveled to Earth in silence. Behind them, Korvax Prime grew dimmer by the day. They arrived with 8 hours to spare. Earth's system looked different now. Thrace's sensors detected ships, massive ones, lurking at the edges of the solar system. They'd been there all along, he realized, hidden, watching. Humanity had been observing the galaxy with technology the Korvax couldn't detect. How long had humans been watching? Thrace transmitted on all frequencies. This is Commander Thrace Vukoran of the Korvax Imperial Fleet. We are returning your people, all living. We could not save all. Silence. Then coordinates appeared, a location in Earth's orbit. A single human ship emerged from nowhere, its stealth systems deactivating. It was enormous, dark, covered in what looked like organic armor. The technology was alien, frightening, beautiful. The humans were transferred via shuttle. Korvax medical teams provided complete records of the deceased, documentation of every injury, honest accounting of what had happened. The human officers who received them said nothing. Their faces were impassive. They took the data and left. 6 hours remained on the deadline. Thrace and his fleet waited in Earth's space. They didn't dare leave. The massive human ship remained nearby, silent and ominous. Hours crawled past. The human ship was scanning each returned human, Thrace's sensors told him. Thorough medical examinations. Interviews, perhaps verification. With 2 hours remaining, Earth finally responded. A human face appeared on Thrace's screen. An older man, perhaps 60 in Earth years, with gray hair and dark eyes that seemed to see through him. He wore a crisp military uniform, medals Thrace didn't recognize arranged on his chest. Commander Vukoran, I am Admiral Ryland, Earth Strategic Command. We have accounted for all our people. 49,873 living. 127 deceased. Thrace began to speak, to explain about the mining accidents, the unavoidable casualties that came with the work. Ryland held up a hand. We have reviewed your medical records. We have interviewed our people. Mining accidents, equipment failures, one execution for attempting escape. We understand what happened. Silence stretched between them. Thrace couldn't read the man's expression. Will you restore our star? Thrace finally asked. That depends on your answer to one question, Commander. Did you know they would die when you took them? The question confused Thrace. We expected some casualties, yes. It's unavoidable in mining operations. The conditions are dangerous, accidents happen. Then you took them knowing some would not return, Ryland said. His voice was calm, controlled, which somehow made his words more terrible. You valued their labor more than their lives. You took them to work them until they broke. Some broke quickly, some broke slowly, but you knew they would break. That is the crime, Commander. It's standard practice, Thrace protested. Every advanced civilization uses labor from primitive species. It's how the galaxy works. The strong take from the weak. We know, Ryland said. We've been watching the galaxy for a long time, Commander, much longer than you think. We've seen what you do, what the Vril Syndicate does, what the Torth Confederacy does. We watched species after species enslaved, worked to death, discarded. We saw what you all become when you have power over others. Then why hide? Thrace asked. If you have this technology, this power, why pretend to be primitive? You could have dominated the galaxy. Ryland's expression flickered, something like sadness crossing his face. Because domination requires becoming like you. We asked ourselves, if we revealed our strength, would we stay ourselves or become what we hated? We chose to hide, to hope you'd all evolve past slavery and conquest on your own. But we didn't. No, you came to Earth. You took our people. You forced our hand. Thrace felt a strange sensation in his chest. Shame, perhaps. An emotion he hadn't associated with military operations before. So what happens now? We've returned them. Will you keep your word? We will restore your star, Ryland said. But the price has changed. New terms appeared on Thrace's screen. His eyes widened as he read them. The Korvax Empire would release every being held in forced labor. All species, all locations, immediately. The Korvax would dismantle their acquisition fleet. No more raids, ever. Reparations would be paid to the families of the 127 deceased humans. Generous reparations. A human monitoring station would be established in Korvax space. Permanently. And finally, if the Korvax Empire ever conducted another forced acquisition operation, the star would die permanently. No warnings, no negotiations. Just death. The High Command will never accept this, Thrace said. Our entire economy is built on labor acquisition. You're asking us to dismantle our empire. We're asking you to stop enslaving people, Ryland corrected. Build your empire on something else. Innovation, trade, mutual cooperation, or don't build an empire at all. We don't particularly care, but you will not take beings from their homes and work them to death. Not anymore. And if we refuse, Ryland's eyes grew cold. Then we leave the devices active. Your star freezes, your people die. And then we visit every other species that practices acquisition. One by one, the Vril, the Torth, the Pelthian hegemony, all of them, we give them the same choice. We're patient, Commander. We've been patient for a very long time. We can wait as long as it takes. This is extortion, Thrace said. Yes, Ryland agreed. Just as what you did to us was slavery. We're using your language now, Commander, the language of force. You taught it to us when you came to Earth. Thrace opened a channel to Korvax Prime. The High Command was listening, he knew. They'd heard everything. The debate that followed was frantic, desperate. Hardliners wanted to refuse to call the humans' bluff to begin immediate evacuation. Pragmatists pointed out that evacuation was impossible and the humans had already proven they weren't bluffing. Time ticked away. 20 minutes left. Then 10. Grand Admiral Kelthais was the one who finally spoke. We accept. The words seemed to echo in the silence that followed. Thrace transmitted the acceptance to Ryland. The human admiral nodded once. Wise choice. We will monitor your compliance. The devices remain in your star permanently. Consider them a reminder. The screen went dark. Within hours, Korvax Prime began warming again. The devices didn't disappear, Thrace's sensors confirmed. They were still there, still operational. But they'd stopped draining energy. The star was recovering. The Korvax Empire complied with every term. What choice did they have? Over the following months, millions of beings from dozens of species were released from forced labor. The Korvax economy crashed. Their stock markets collapsed. Riots broke out on industrial worlds suddenly deprived of their labor force. The acquisition fleet was dismantled. Ships that had conducted raids across the galaxy for centuries were decommissioned. Crews were reassigned. Thrace found himself at a desk, processing the paperwork of his empire's humiliation. The human monitoring station appeared at the edge of Korvax space. A dark, sleek installation bristling with weapons that Korvax scientists couldn't even identify. Human ships patrolled acquisition routes, interdicting slave-taking operations by other species. The galaxy was changing, forced into it by a species that had hidden its true nature for longer than anyone knew. Months later, Thrace requested a meeting with human representatives. He needed to understand. He needed to know why. They sent Kira Strand, the teacher from Earth who'd survived the mines, who'd learned Korvax during her captivity. She met him in a neutral space station in a small conference room with a viewport showing the stars beyond. "Why?" Thrace asked. "Your species developed stellar engineering, quantum manipulation, stealth technology beyond our comprehension. You could have dominated the galaxy. Instead, you hid." "Why?" Kira sat across from him, her hands folded on the table. She looked tired, Thrace thought. The months since her return had aged her. "Because domination requires becoming like you," she said. "We watched the great civilizations of the galaxy, Commander. We saw the Korvax Empire's acquisition fleets, the Vril Syndicate's breeding programs, the Torth Confederacy's genetic modifications of slave species. We saw what power did to all of you. How it corrupted you, how you justified atrocity as efficiency. We thought it was normal," Thrace said. "Everyone did it. That's the problem, everyone did it. The strong preyed on the weak and convinced themselves it was natural, inevitable, but it's not, Commander, it's a choice. You chose to be predators, we chose to be something else. So you developed weapons to threaten us with." Kira smiled sadly. "We developed the capability to threaten you. We hoped we'd never have to use it. For 400 years we watched and waited. We had a debate on Earth, centuries of debate. Should we reveal ourselves, intervene, force the galaxy to be better, or should we stay hidden, let you all find your own path to decency?" 400 years, Thrace repeated. The number staggered him. "You've had FTL for 400 years. Longer, actually. We achieved FTL capability in the early 21st century. We built our first stellar engineering devices in the 23rd. By the time your species was forming its empire, we were already watching you from the shadows." Thrace thought about all the species the Korvax had raided over the centuries, all the beings enslaved, all while humanity watched from hiding. "You could have stopped us, saved them all." "We know," Kira said, and there was pain in her voice. "That's the tragedy of it, Commander. We had the power to intervene, but we were afraid. Afraid that if we used our power, we'd become like you. So we waited, we hoped. We watched billions suffer because we were too afraid to act. Then why act now? Why reveal yourselves for 50,000 humans when you'd watch billions suffer?" "Because you touched Earth," Kira said simply. "You made it personal. You took our people from our home. The debate on Earth was instantaneous after that. Unanimous, even. We'd failed the galaxy by hiding. We wouldn't fail our own." Thrace was silent for a long moment. "So what now? You've revealed yourselves. The galaxy knows Earth is powerful. What will you do with that power?" Kira looked out the viewport at the stars. "We tried isolation. It didn't work. Species like yours kept enslaving, kept conquering, kept spreading suffering across the galaxy. So now we try something harder. We protect those who can't protect themselves. We make sure no one else suffers what you made our people suffer. We force the galaxy to be better whether it wants to be or not." "That's what we did," Thrace said quietly. "We thought we were bringing order, civilization. We thought we were making the galaxy better." "The difference," Kira said, turning back to face him, "is that we're not taking anything. We're not enslaving anyone. We're stopping those who do. You built your empire on the backs of slaves. We're dismantling those empires piece by piece. Some would call that conquest." "Some probably will," Kira agreed. "History will judge whether we became the monsters we feared becoming. But Commander, I was in your minds. I saw what you do to people you consider beneath you. I watched a man die because he tried to escape. I watched a woman lose her leg because safety protocols were too expensive. If stopping that makes us monsters, then I'll be a monster." Thrace left the meeting with more questions than answers. He returned to Korvax Prime, to a homeworld still recovering from its near-death experience. The star above shone normally now, bright and warm, but the devices were still there. Everyone knew it, the sword hanging over their civilization. He filed his final report to the High Command, a complete accounting of his conversation with Kira Strand, an assessment of humanity's capabilities and intentions, and his own conclusion. "We thought we were hunting prey on a primitive world," he wrote. "We were wrong. We weren't hunting, we were being tested, and we failed. The humans could have destroyed us. Instead, they're forcing us to be better. I don't know if that's mercy or a more sophisticated form of conquest. Perhaps there's no difference. What I do know is this: we touched Earth and everything changed. Let this serve as warning to any species considering similar action. Leave humanity alone, or they will teach you what you should have learned on your own. In the years that followed, the galaxy transformed. Human ships patrolled trade routes, stopping acquisition operations wherever they occurred. Species that had built empires on slave labor found their economies collapsing, their power structures crumbling. Some adapted, others resisted. Those that resisted found their stars flickering, found their homeworlds cooling, found humanity's patience had limits. Gradually, reluctantly, the galaxy learned. Slavery declined. Acquisition fleets were dismantled. Species that had been preyed upon for millennia found themselves protected by ships from a world they'd never heard of. Thrace watched it all from his position in the Korvax defense forces. He'd been demoted after the Earth incident, his career effectively over. But he didn't mind. He spent his days monitoring the human station at the edge of Korvax space, watching the ships come and go. Sometimes he wondered what humanity could have been if they'd revealed themselves centuries earlier. How many lives could have been saved? How different would the galaxy look? But he knew why they'd waited. Power corrupted. Absolute power corrupted absolutely. Humanity had feared becoming what they fought against. So they'd hidden, hoping the galaxy would evolve on its own. The Korvax had proven they wouldn't, so humanity had stepped out of the shadows, and the galaxy would never be the same. On his final day before retirement, Thrace received a message from Kira Strand. Commander Vukoran. I heard you're retiring. I wanted to thank you. The message confused him. Thank him for what? You could have fought our terms, she continued. Could have convinced your superiors to resist, to evacuate, to gamble that we were bluffing. But you didn't. You accepted that you were wrong. That's rare. Most beings, when confronted with their own cruelty, double down, justify it, defend it. You didn't. You changed. That's why there's hope for the galaxy, Commander, because people like you can change. Thrace watched the message 3 times. Then he deleted it. He didn't want thanks. He didn't deserve it. He'd been part of the system. He'd conducted 47 acquisition operations before Earth. Thousands of beings enslaved by his actions. The fact that he changed after being caught, after being threatened, didn't erase that. But perhaps it was a start. He looked up at the sky, at the star that had nearly died, that still held humanity's devices in its heart. A reminder, a threat, a promise. The Korvax had touched Earth, and Earth had touched them back. The galaxy would remember.